Hi, and welcome to the Quick and Dirty Romance Podcast. We're your hosts, romance authors and bicoastal friends for life. I'm Skye McDonald, author of the hockey romance series, The Connecticut Commodores.
And I'm Sarah Smith, author of the steamy hockey romance Fake as Puck.
And together, we are Sarah Skye, author of the best-selling Unlikely Pairing series.
Each episode will dive deep into what it's like to be a contemporary romance author. We'll talk writing inspiration, give you the inside scoop about the publishing world, chat about how we write those infamous sex scenes, and more. And then we'll pull out and wrap it up in 30 minutes or less, but we promise to leave you satisfied.
So if you haven't already read our books, do be sure to check them out after you've listened to this podcast, and definitely DM us with any questions or requests for future episodes that you might have.
So today's episode is a very salacious one. we're talking about why choose romances.
I am ready for this.
Oh my God, I am too. I feel like, I don't know about you, Skye, but like in the romance world, I feel like I've been seeing a lot of reader interest and a lot of reader excitement for why choose romance in like very recently, like in the last few years or so. Like before, I feel like it was a very taboo thing, and now I feel like everybody everybody's writing a why choose romance.
I don't know. I'm not writing a why choose romance. I write contemporary. I'm in my lane for now, at least for now. But it is very popular. The phrase itself has become very popular. It has definitely become one of those subgenres that has taken hold, along with a lot of other, paranormal has really risen lately, but why choose can be paranormal, it can be mafia, or it can be straight up contemporary. And so I do think it is sort of spanning across a lot of the subgenres as its own subgenre. So it's a very interesting kind of topic. It is interesting that we can even talk about this, in not too many years ago, this would have been a very taboo subject matter. So where do we want to begin? And maybe just first of all with the terminology, because I think that the psychology around the terminology is very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. So from what I understand, and again, like I'm not an expert. I'm just a romance super fan reader and a romance author. And this is just what I have noticed in my experience of being both. But I feel like for the longest time, why choose was called reverse harem. Like that's kind of what people knew it as. And I'm not really sure why the name changed. I definitely, I think, at least from what I noticed, the name started changing to why choose when it started becoming very popular in the last few years. At least I think so. And I wonder if it's because not like I don't know, maybe it was like maybe an author I'm just not aware of like decided to rebrand and like call it why choose. I don't know. And then it just caught on. I have no idea. But I do wonder if like I just wonder if reverse harem was like a term that not unless you already read the genre, like it wouldn't appeal to you for whatever reason. Maybe because people didn't really understand or know. Because for clarity, reverse harem is when there is one female main character and she has multiple sexual and relationship partners. So that's I think
Usually male.
Yes, usually male. And that's what Skye and I are talking about today in this episode. We're talking about why choose romances where the female main character is the main person in the relationship and she has multiple male romantic and sexual partners.
Let's start with the language around it because I am a linguist nerd and I think it is interesting the way things get both branded as well as talked about, right? And there are certain phrases that we all use in a common vernacular or we use as a euphemism for something and we all know what it means, but it's easier to say. So I think reverse harem gives off a lot of images that aren't as widespreadedly palatable as why choose. Okay. Reverse harem. First of all, you have the term harem, which I'm not going to say it's like a cultural appropriation kind of term, but it definitely does conjure up quite a few different images of certain cultures, I guess I would say. And then It's also sounds a little bit more hedonistic, right? Harem. You think of like people lounging on couches and maybe smoking like out of like hookah pipes or all sorts of things, right? Like there's a lot of imagery that could go with that that is and is not accurate, right? Like that's just a general, I'm making a lot of broad strokes about that term. But again, it does come from a place that it calls up sort of like a, like I said, like a hedonistic image. Whereas why choose is like, why not?
Yeah,
That could be at the grocery store. There could be bananas. There could be eggplants. Why choose?
yeah. Honestly, Skye, that's a good way to put it because like there is just like a lightness about like why choose? Because it's a very, yeah, like you can use it for literally any situation where you don't want to choose.
Yeah.
And in this situation, it's just like a bunch of dudes. So
Yeah, it's just it's one penis or another. Why choose? I did do an Instagram post where I had like a guy in a suit and a guy in a hockey jersey, and I was like, which one do you prefer? And so many of the responses were, why choose? And I was like, I also agree. Why choose? But I think it is a softer terminology that is more palatable for like a broader audience, right? So I think that that's probably why we're seeing that shift in terms of the marketing of it. Whether or not it was started by one person or a corporation, I have no idea, but I definitely see how that makes it more open for more people. But as to why there is so much interest, gosh.
I mean, when we start asking why about anything, I think we can like tumble down a rabbit hole because
Absolutely.
I feel like the why is going to be different depending on who you ask. And I fully admit, like, I did not, like, when I started reading romance books, I was a kid. And admittedly, I was kind of young. I was like 8 or 9, and I probably shouldn't have been reading them in the first place. But I did, and it is what it is. And but I was not reading like reverse harem white shoes. And I think it's a trope that has been around for a very long time. So, and I just honestly, I just didn't know it existed as a thing. Um, until I had gotten older and like I started discovering all the other different romance tropes and because there's just so many. Um, and I wonder if there's just an element of so I think in current modern life, depending on where you live and the culture that you're a part of, polyamory is definitely a thing, more so than it was, I would even say like 10 years ago when we were kids. Or would not, sorry, we weren't kids 10 years ago, unfortunately. I meant like 10 years ago. Also when
The 90s, 10 years ago, the 90s.
right? Yeah. And I wonder but despite polyamory being more of an accepted lifestyle, now I still think there's an element of taboo in being somebody who wants to have multiple partners. And I wonder if there is one of the reasons why readers like it so much is because it's a thing that maybe you can't indulge in easily in real life, like a lot of other like romance taboo tropes. So that's why it's fun to read, because it's a fantasy and it's kind of naughty. And you get to completely lose yourself in the fantasy of a why choose romance when you're reading one that maybe you can't, and maybe you don't want to deal with that in real life. Because okay, so speaking as a monogamous person, like I've never been interested in wanting to be with multiple people at the same time.
Okay.
Not my thing. I'm just wired as monogamous, and I don't know why.
Okay.
I was raised that way. Those are the relationships I was exposed to, and I enjoy that. I don't ever want to be with more than one person at one time.
Okay.
But I love a good why choose romance. I love the trope. I think it's really fun. I think especially in the last couple of years, there's been like not really a micro trope, but like a really specific like hockey white shoes romance. And I've been really enjoying that, really enjoying that, but I don't want it at all as a person, as a human being.
You don't want to run the train with a bunch of hockey players? Did I just say that? Did I say that?
Say that, and hell no, I do not want to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So I think ding 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 spot on around the polyamory, ethically non-monogamy, shoving this into the limelight, right? It is certainly, I don't think it's fair to say, I mean, gosh, they were having swinger parties in the 70s, 60s, key parties, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you go, you put your keys in the fishbowl, whoever keys you pull out, that's who you're going home with. That was a thing
Yeah.
before FetLife, before Tinder, before all the things.
Adult friend reader.
Yes. So before all of that, this, like, the idea of openness in a marriage has been quietly, and if you don't like Adirondack chairs, right? The Adirondack chairs, which I learned about, and it's, you know, upside down pineapples. Okay. There are listeners out there who are laughing and nodding. There are some that are like, wait, what? It's okay.
Can I just
It's
say,
okay.
we like in the area where I live, everybody has Adirondack chairs. It is not a secret thing to denote.
Same.
Yeah, it's just like literally we just have Adirondack chairs. Yeah.
But if you don't know what we're talking about, one of the assumed things is that 2 Adirondack chairs on your front yard means you're down to party, which I don't even understand how this works. What do? Do you knock on the door? Hey, how you doing? Like, what? How does this work? Also, please keep your pineapples straight up, folks, because the upside down pineapple is also a universal symbol for we're down to swing. Okay. These are things I learned when I moved to the suburbs. I didn't know this. We didn't have Adirondack chairs in Brooklyn. You know, they would just get carried away. But yes, and I don't know how much of this, because anytime I have this conversation with groups of people, there's half of the conversation is like, oh yeah, and there's the other half is like, what? So, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Like, this is some things that people know, and some people don't. But open relationships have definitely been more open. I think I would say, you know, there is definitely more of an acceptance of it. Certainly, if you are on the apps, you see a lot of ethically non-monogamous, and that's great as long as you know that that's what you're into. I personally have spoken to a lot of people who have struggled very hard emotionally around embracing that because it's what their partner wanted, and they felt like they needed it. So we could go on a whole tangent about that, which is really, since neither of us are exercising that option at this in our sex lives, then I don't think that that's really something we have to. I just always hope that whatever people are doing, it's because they know that's what they want and it's what's best for them. And I worry about that line. But I definitely think it has become more normalized and more mainstream for all of the like pluses and deltas of that. And so I think it's easier. But I think on the other hand, and interesting to your point, it's a female empowerment. It's a feminism thing, right? Like, and you know, honestly, in a lot of open relationships, it's very often the man who wants it open, right? Like, these are stereotypes. This is not applicable to everybody. But a lot of times women feel like they need to do things to please their man or to keep their man, right? And the why choose romance is like, oh no, they're all being kept by me. And there's an empowerment element to that in a deeply sexual and like celebratory sort of goddess energy way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is the woman as a goddess, right? Being worshipped by, and like not worrying about being good enough, not worrying about whether or not she's right for him, but them pleasing her. And I think that there is a lot of tantalizing empowerment to that.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that is a huge part of it. And obviously, this is just something that I've been thinking about and what I think plays into part of why it's such a popular trope and why so many readers, specifically female readers, really like this trope. I think, like you said, Skye, like the female pleasure and the female empowerment is a huge part of it. I think in reality, because a lot, not all, but a lot of women who date men express a lot of frustration with not getting their needs met, not just sexually, because that's a big part of it too, but emotionally and feeling like they have to give up a lot to be with their partner, and how much of a frustration and struggle that is. And so to be able to read a romance where the woman is the center of the relationship in a way, like obviously every person who's part of this why choose romance relationship, nobody's being mistreated, nobody's being ignored. Like, yeah, issues come up in the story arc because when you're writing the characters, you want the characters to have like their own personalities and their own like backstory and whatever they go through. So everything is addressed as it comes up. But everybody wants to be part of it. And most importantly, everybody like all of the male partners are very, very focused on making sure that everything that's happening is good for the female main character. It feels good. She feels safe. She feels happy. She's able to advocate and assert herself, like all of these things that unfortunately I don't think happen sometimes in real life when you are a woman, not just in a why choose relationship, but when you're in a relationship with your partner.
Sure.
And I think and so the why choose romances that I have been reading, they're very, very steamy. Very, very like multiple open door love scenes, multiple types of sex acts happening. And I think part of that is probably because I don't know if you, I feel like a few years ago there was like a research study published between straight couples, lesbian couples, and gay couples. And the group with the biggest orgasm gap, meaning like the group that had like one group of people was not orgasming as much as their partner, it was the straight couples. And it was the women who were not orgasming as much as their male partners. And I'm sure it's more complicated than just like, oh, dudes are lazy and selfish and don't like, I'm like, some dudes are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably a lot more complicated than just that in certain relationships. And I think that's a frustration that a lot of women have experienced in real life, just not feeling prioritized and not feeling like they get the pleasure and joy that they deserve in the bedroom. And in Why Choose Romance, that is absolutely happening. Like the guys are working very, very hard to make sure that the woman, their focus is having a great time and all of her fantasies are coming true in this relationship.
But that's also true in all of our books. Like,
right. Yeah.
We like the guy in our romance, like both of our, and pretty much most of the romances I've ever read, like the guy is very focused on her, right? And I think that, but I think that the Why Choose just kind of opens that up even more. And I do think the emotional aspect of a woman not, because like even in my books where like the book I'm working on now in The Crease, you know, the main character, the woman, they're actually both dealing with imposter syndrome, which is interesting. They're both in very different ways. It's manifested for both of them. But like he's very focused on her, but she's still thinking like, do I deserve this happiness? Do I deserve a guy who's this good? Do I deserve like, whereas in a Why Choose, you have so like you have one woman who have men just coming to her. And so I'm sure that there are ways in which she, you know, you could write in a character wondering about their self-worth, but I definitely think it's sort of a boost of a woman just saying yes. And also, like, it's definitely a middle finger to slut shaming.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And I think that that's probably a reason why we've seen it rise up. Unfortunately, there is still an awful lot of slut shaming in regular society for a variety of reasons. But I think a lot of us have become more aware of the ways in which we've been sort of programmed to put each other down, and the puritanical like idea of like, oh, she wants a lot of men so she's a slut or something like that, and it's like, that's ridiculous. You know, you want what you want, and your life choices are your life choices, and hopefully you're making the choices that are for the best for you. But to pretend like you shouldn't want sex, right, or that sex isn't pleasurable to you or isn't good, those are super old fashioned but still ingrained, right? You're not supposed to give it all away, right? Like all of these purity things that are still taught in many, many places, right? What is it like? Oh, you're like, if you have sex, like one of the things that I've literally been in a workshop as a child and heard is like, if you have sex before marriage, you're like a piece of chewed up bubble gum. Like, what?
Yeah, isn't that awful?
It's terrible. And people say this with a straight face and they still say it. They still believe it. And, you know, if you're listening, you believe that, I mean, that's you. Please don't put other people down, right? Like, that's all I can really say. Like, if you feel that those are your values, I understand that. I'm not mad at you for that. But at the same time, it's not fair to presume that that's applicable to everybody. And I definitely think that the idea of a woman being able to say, no, I enjoy sex and I enjoy sex with multiple people, even if it's not your thing, as you spoke about, Sarah, like even if it's not your own reality, just watching someone like say yes to what they want. I mean, it's just another brand of romance,
Yeah. No,
you know?
totally. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think part like whether or not you personally want to participate in something like a why choose polyamorous
Hmm.
romance or relationship, like that's kind of not even the point. It's just like to know, I don't know, like as a person who was raised in a similar Puritan
Hmm.
religion, not pure, we weren't Puritans, I don't want to say that, but like in the same type of like culture where sex was very like you don't have sex until you have just
Hmm.
until you're
Hmm.
married and you would should never do this and that, and like you were made to if it was known that you decided to have sex outside of marriage, you were made to feel like a slut, like you said, which is terrible. What a terrible reason to mistreat somebody. So to know that there is this entire subgenre of romance that like champions the exact opposite of that
Hmm.
is really, really cool. Even if I personally like don't want to be part of something like this, it's still like really fun and it's still like it's still, I don't know, there's just something very heartening to know that there are people who like there's a lot of readers who really enjoy this and who and I think because so many people enjoy reading about it, it helped normalizes it.
Hmm.
Even even if most people aren't going to decide to be in a relationship like this, it's not even really the point. It's just knowing that it's okay to indulge in your fantasies as long as everybody's an adult and consenting, you
Hmm.
know, who cares? Like it's really nobody's business really, like what a bunch of adults want to do as long as what they're doing is consensual and everybody is cool
Hmm.
with it. Like, it's really, I don't know, there's just really something, I don't know, empowering about that to me. And I do think it's really, isn't my cat's knocking stuff off my they're awesome, awesome. I just think it's like, especially, I think, and I, to bring it back to something that's rooted in reality, I think dating and relationships historically and statistically can be pretty dangerous for women who date men. Obviously, not all
Mm.
women are to encounter like domestic violence or assault or sex crimes or anything like that, but a lot of women do. And I think that there's kind of a safety in indulging in the fantasy of reading a romance where it's a why choose, she's dating and going out with these multiple guys and none of them are trying to hurt her, none of them are trying to take advantage of her, all of them respect her boundaries,
Hmm.
all of them respect her needs sexually and emotionally and in the relationship, because I don't think that's something that happens as often as it should in real life,
Hmm.
unfortunately. And I think that's part of it for me. I like that I can escape in that fantasy of reading about that. And because in real life, I just don't think, like, again, I'm not interested in in doing this, but I would be like, if I were, I'd be very nervous to do this with certain men, honestly, because
Mm.
I think it would be really scary in that I don't think I think that there are people out there. Sorry, I'm trying not to be like, because all men are like
No, they are not.
criminals. They're not. But most women have really scary stories of what it's like to date and be with certain
Yeah.
men, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. And abuse runs across all genders,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. But, unfortunately it is true that a lot of women have been in situations they feel fundamentally unsafe.
Mhm.
I don't know, I don't know a woman who has not had some encounter that made them feel unsafe for being a woman, right? I just don't. Um, and I think that that is important in terms of like claiming your power and also indulging in the fantasies, and we've talked about this a lot over the nearly 5 years of this podcast. But romance is a fairy tale, right? We are creating the fantasy stories that allow us to journey and be safe and have fun, and also think about what we actually want, right? Like, so this is an interesting thing that you've said, because like being a person who is not interested in in polyamory or opening your marriage or anything like that, but appreciating these books, right? Like, there's a balance there of knowing yourself as well as knowing, like, this is fun, right? And having fun and enjoying the fairy tale that has been put forth of all of these lovely, lovely men who happen to be in one place, which really is hard to find. You really like the idea of just happening upon a bunch of amazing and like extremely upstanding people. Like, statistically, there's probably a douchebag in the bunch.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're just gonna know, but it is a fun way of looking at like your femininity. Like I said, I mean, I think it is a lot of goddess energy, right? Like, if you think about like the myths of Greece or anything, all of the goddesses had their lovers in the same way, and there's a certain amount of embracing that among women and our power that comes from both like our sensuality as well as just our innate femaleness. And I think that there's something to that, and that is probably another reason why it's very appealing even to people who would not put an upside down pineapple on their door. So
Right? Yeah. No, I think it's an overwhelmingly positive thing that it's such a popular trope.
The thing that I do struggle with, and I will admit to this being my own bias and POV, is I have a hard time with the love story among that many other people, because it just feels extremely complicated to fall in love with that many people all at once. It feels tiring. How do you get anything else done? How do you get anything done? Like, it's one thing if you're in the bedroom for like 5 hours, okay, but like you're also going on dates with like a whole team. That's 19 people. Okay, maybe it's not 19, but even so, it is 19 on the hockey team. But my point is like the reason that I have not been leaning towards writing a why choose, although I have no problem with the concept of multiple partners or anything like that, is because the dynamics of the love story, I feel like that is not a place. Like, I feel like you're opening multiple plot lines there almost, and that to me feels overwhelming, although I know many people do it very beautifully. So there's one thing to me about like having a bunch of lovers, and there's another thing about falling for a bunch of people all at once that just feels exhausting. I'm gonna say.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, it's definitely not for everyone. Like, not for everyone. But I think like, so in the why choose romances that I've read, admittedly, I haven't read one where she's dating like a dozen people. I don't even know how that would work. The ones that I've read, the female main character, she's dating, she's in a relationship with two men at the same time. And then a few of them, there are three men at the same time. And that's definitely, you bring up that part of it, like that would be exhausting. How do you like address everyone's needs and concerns? That would be very like a lot to deal with. And in the books that I've read, they deal with all of that. Granted, they do it in a very like in a way that like gets resolved. Everyone's like they take the time to address whatever it is that each person is feeling in that moment and why they're feeling that way, what they can do to help support them. Just like you should in any other relationship, you're just accounting for another person. So it's not impossible. Yeah. And obviously, like, we're talking about fiction here. These are fictional why choose romances. Things are going to end up with a happily ever after, and like things will be wrapped up tidily. Like it's not going to be like, and then 10 years later they have this horrible breakup. Like, we don't even go there. Like, obviously real life is a lot more complicated and messy than a romance story, and we get that. But I think the way that it's addressed in the books that I've read, I think it's addressed in a really realistic and thoughtful way. And they, like, all of the characters are concerns, and all of the characters and their concerns are met with empathy and support, and without judgment, without like lashing out. And even when there are moments of frustration and like jealousy, like they work through it and they figure out, okay, what is causing you to feel this way? What do we need to do to make you feel better? If this isn't for you, that's fine. That's not for you. But if you feel like you can get past this, like, we want to have you as part of our relationship. And that
team.
Yeah, right. As part of your team. Yeah. Yeah. So it gets worked out. But yeah, in real life, yet another reason why I couldn't do this. Like I'm not doing this with more than one person.
Fair enough.
Energy. Yeah. Would you ever write a Why Choose Romance, Skye? I just need to know. Like right
Um,
now,
as of
speaking of,
now, it is not part of my trajectory.
yeah.
I feel like if I'm going somewhere else, it's not that road. But hey, I've surprised myself in a lot of ways over the years. So I
Yeah.
would never say never,
Mhm.
but it is not on the back burner for your girl here. And
Okay.
you?
Okay. So one time I was like this was like maybe a year and a half ago. I was trying to like pitch like steamier story ideas to an editor. And one of the ones that I had pitched was a why choose sports romance. I think it was soccer. I don't know why, because I don't care
Okay.
about any sports and I don't know anything about soccer. I don't know why I chose soccer. I know, sorry. And but actually, so I was definitely open to it, but the editor ended up going with a different idea that I had proposed, and it wasn't why choose. It was like an age gap forbidden romance, and I wrote that, and that was
Mhm.
really fun. So like I definitely would. I just I don't think it's on my radar anytime soon, but I think it
Okay.
would be fun. I think it could be fun to write something like that because that would definitely be out of my comfort zone and it would be fun. And I enjoy it as a reader. So why not try it as a writer someday? I don't know. Like you said, never say never. Like,
Never say never.
yeah.
Never say never. I love it. Oh, that was great. That was good for me. Was it good for you?
Hell yeah, it was good for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was definitely good in multiple ways. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please do leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever it is you listen to us. And then go on and read our books. Come on, how long have you been listening? It's time. You can find us on Instagram. We are at author Sarah Skye. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at author Skye McDonald.
And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I am at author Sarah S. We love to hear from you, so reach out and DM us with any questions or requests for future episodes.
Thanks again for listening, everybody. And this has been an interesting one, so be sure to leave something in the comments. We will speak to you soon. Bye.